Hey, this is Tony from Truth Be Told. Captain Ron and I want to tell you about a new product that is sponsoring our show called GetTheTea.com, home of Life Change Tea. We've been using this product for over a month now, and we've seen a change in the way we feel. More energy, starting to lose weight. As someone that works out on a regular basis, I didn't know if this tea was really going to help me, but I have to say, I was surprised. Feeling great with more energy, and I have lost a few pounds in over a few weeks. So Captain Ron and I endorse this product, and we hope that you go to getthetea.com and pick up the Super Tea. Life Change Tea is a unique blend of all natural ingredients used with great results for several years. They take great pride in selling all organic U.S. manufactured product. It's a special blend which aids in maintaining great digestion, boosting your immune system, and may help cleanse your body from unwanted intruders. So stay healthy, stay happy by going to getthetea.com. Tell them that Truth Be Told sent you. Welcome to Truth Be Told. I'm your host, Tony Sweet. You're here with your other host, Captain Ron. We have a great show for you guys today. We have our guest whose new TV series, Waco, based on his book called Stalling for Time. Gary Noesner is here, and Gary is a former FBI negotiator who went mind to mind with David Koresh of the Branch Davidian standoff. Well, in his book, we get to know what went on behind the scenes and how this fateful tragedy happened in the first place. So please welcome to Truth Be Told, former FBI negotiator, Gary Noesner. Hey, Gary.
Hi, Tony, Ron.
Well, we are excited to have Gary here because Gary was there. I mean, this guy has seen the truth that went behind one of the U.S.'s biggest tragedies, and we're excited to have you here so you can explain to, in fact, a couple of generations that may not even know.
It's been 25 years. Is that incredible?
Right. And I mean, I remember, I'm from Kansas originally, so I remember that it was, it was a big story because we're not too far from there. But a lot of people in the younger generations don't know about this, and this was, it actually even changed, I think, didn't it change with the, not gun law, but I know it changed some laws with right after that. So, Gary, so please, if you don't mind, just kind of explain what happened. I mean, what really started the Waco tragedy, and then explain really what this Davidian was.
Yeah, because the two groups that split before.
Because a lot of people may not even know how it got started.
Right. With George Roden, I think.
Well, the Branch Davidians, as led by David Koresh, was a subset of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which has sort of tried to distance themselves, understandably, from David Koresh. But it was a group that had a very strong philosophical belief in the end times, as foretold in the book of Revelation, and their interpretation of the forces of evil coming against the righteous, and in David Koresh's interpretation, the government, i.e. the U.S. government, was essentially fulfilled that role of Zion, of the forces of evil against them. So, that's kind of where we got, the government came in confrontation. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms began to investigate. Did you have a question? Did you want me?
Oh no. I was just agreeing. I was just like I just remember it. So.
Yeah, I meant to say forces of Babylon before, not the forces of Zion. But
Tony thought you were talking about Star Wars. He got all confused there. That's what happened.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, and I'm old now, so it happens. But David Koresh was investigated for illegally modifying weapons. Converting them from semi-automatic to fully automatic. There were charges of child abuse and sexual abuse of minors.
How timely all this is for today. We're dealing with these issues right now about the weapons and the. Yep.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of relevance to some issues today. So the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms secured an arrest warrant for David Koresh and a search warrant. And as we know, on February 28th of 1993, they attempted to execute that warrant, and the Davidians had gotten a heads up that the ATF was coming, so they were waiting, heavily armed, and there's some controversy as to who shot first when the ATF agents rolled up in front of the compound in their trailers. There was a news crew that had found out that this was happening, and they were looking for the compound, and they ran across a rural post office delivery man and asked him for directions. And he turned out to be David Koresh's brother-in-law. Wow. And quickly drove back to the compound and, let them know that the ATF was coming. So the Davidians were waiting for him. Now, the Davidians suggest that ATF fired first. ATF says the Davidians fired first. I wasn't there. I wasn't involved. I can't say for certain, although it's my understanding that the television news cameraman who did take some footage has testified that as soon as the ATF agents got out of the transportation vehicles, they were under fire from the Davidians. So
wow.
So the shootout unfolds over the course of hours, and it was at the time the largest shootout on U.S. soil since the Civil War.
Wow.
Literally thousands of rounds of ammunition on both sides. ATF essentially almost ran out of ammunition. 4 ATF agents were killed, 17 wounded. A number of Davidians, 4 or 5 were killed. I can't remember the exact number. And eventually a ceasefire was secured, and ATF withdrew from the front of the property with its dead and wounded, and a siege began. So we in the FBI were then called upon to come out and resolve the incident, because if a federal agent is assaulted or killed, it now becomes a matter that the FBI investigates.
Right.
So I flew out that night as the chief negotiator for the FBI, and got on the scene and that evening and was briefed up as to what was going on, and I ended up speaking to Koresh for some 10 or 12 hours the first night.
Wow.
Why the rest of my team was arriving to set up the negotiation process. So, I mean, you can't really envision a worse scenario for a negotiator, because there's already been tremendous loss of life. There's obviously a huge amount of emotional instability and anger and rage, and you're supposed to come in on top of that and say, hey, let's all be friends. It's to say that's a challenge is one of the world's great understatements. So that's basically how it began, and over the course of 51 days, there was efforts made to secure the release of folks inside, to secure surrender, and we had some success. There were some strong disagreements within the FBI as to whether to support the approach we negotiators were taking, which was essentially to try to cooperatively convince them to come out. And there were some in the FBI, and those who've watched the Waco TV show, you see a pretty accurate sense of that conflict. There were those in the tactical side of the FBI that wanted to, in essence, tighten the pressure and to engage in activities intended to force them out. So we had quite a disconnect within the FBI that ran counter to our historical experiences and methodology. So as you know, I was replaced about halfway through, and they brought in a negotiating coordinator who they felt would be less resistance to those tactical initiatives. And it's true, I had been an impediment to that. But no one came out after I left. We had 35 people come out, including 21 children, during the first 26 days. And the FBI took a more strident, confrontational approach that, in my view, predictably, but also sadly, created a level of distrust between the two parties, and ultimately no one was coming out. The FBI decided there's not a lot of options law enforcement has. People either surrender and cooperate or use force.
Hey, Gary, can I ask you this? You said that you...
Yeah, sure.
If you could just back up here a second, because this is incredible to think that you were on the phone with David Koresh. When you first talked to him, now, what do you think when you speak with him? How does he seem to you? Does he seem like he's a crazy guy? Does he seem like What's it like? Like a zealot? What does he come across as? What's your first impression when you're on the phone with this man?
Yeah, good question. And I get asked that a fair amount. I think the perception that many in the public would have was that he was, mentally unstable and delusional and out of touch with reality. And I didn't find that to be the case at all. He was clearly angry. He had been wounded in the shootout, so he was a bullet creased his, I believe it was his left arm right above the thumb and went in and out of his left side.
Ooh.
And so he was in a great deal of pain, but he was very angry at ATF and the fact that they had conducted the raid and that the shootout had occurred. So we had to deal with that anger, and obviously our approach was to sort of separate ourselves and the FBI from ATF and indicate that he needed to get a fair day in court and tell his side of the story, and the best way to do that was for everyone to come out. But he could be rational. There were times, if we look throughout that first day, where he would be actually down to earth, easy to talk to, friendly. Other times he would be angry and accusatory and very self-serving. He was, in many ways, a very narcissistic, manipulative kind of guy. My only beef with the 6-part miniseries that I was involved in, and feel they did a good job with it overall, but my primary concern is they painted a little bit too sympathetic picture of him, because in many ways he was a pretty tough guy to talk with. He would say one thing and do something else, and he would repeatedly change his mind about what he said he was going to do, and that made it very frustrating as a negotiator.
I'm curious, is this the longest standing? Because 50-some days, that's a lot of time, and I'm surprised that the FBI or any other agency did not go in faster. Was it just because of the children, or was it just because there were so many people?
Well, I think primarily we have always culturally in our country and others in the civilized world have placed a higher value on the lives of women and children,
right,
and view them as non-combatants, and that certainly was a major factor that helped contributed to the pretty remarkable restraint. But yes, 51 days is a lot. There was, I think we were spending upwards of $150,000 a day, which was a lot of money in 1993. Yeah. And there was a great deal of public criticism and criticism from government officials that, why is this taking so long? You're the FBI. You know how to do these things. Just get it done. So all the people that say, hurry up and get it done, are the same people that say, well, why did you do it that way? So you can't win.
Right.
But it was a huge challenge. And, I don't know that there's ever been a more difficult negotiation that anybody in law enforcement has ever conducted.
You got to think about this, Gary. Do you ever wonder if, since you were able to successfully negotiate 35 people out to safety and save their lives in the 26 days you were on the negotiating there, do you ever think that maybe if you would have stayed the course, or they would have let you keep going, that maybe you could have got more out?
Absolutely. I mean, and I should make it clear that this wasn't just Gary doing this. We work in pretty large teams of negotiators, and it's quite a process to go through. There might be as many as 6, 7, or 8 negotiators per 12-hour shift, so it's a big operation, and there's a lot going on. But I'm totally convinced that had the approach or the strategy that the negotiation team was pursuing been allowed to run its course, we certainly would have got a lot more people out. At the end of the day, would we have convinced David Koresh to give up his kingdom and his absolute power over his followers? It's hard to say. I would say there would have been a chance for that to happen, but I certainly couldn't guarantee it. But for me, success or failures is, did we, as negotiators, get everybody out we could have? And in the context of our disagreements and how it influenced our ability to be successful, we didn't. So lives that were lost that I feel if we had done the job that we knew how to do and had done in the past and done subsequently, we would have got more out.
Wow.
Well, I know there a lot of decisions coming from Washington, D.C. was criticized greatly. And now that you're out and looking back, what are some of those decisions that you think should have been different?
I think you're going to be surprised to hear me say, and this does not reinforce those who feel there's a big overreaching government conspiracy.
Right.
I don't think Washington was that engaged in the day-to-day decision making. I think that was left to the on-scene commander for the
Oh.
FBI scene. I think he acted with a lot more unilateral power. At that time, it's changed subsequent, but at that time, the local FBI field office special agent in charge would have been given a great deal of latitude to manage such an incident in the best way they felt possible, with certainly some input from headquarters. But I know there's a lot of people that are, they were trying to get Clinton, and because they wanted to get Clinton, they had to get Reno, and
Yeah, Janet
these
Reno.
people were telling us to do all these terrible things. And as far as I could gather, they had almost no input. I never got a phone call from Janet Reno or the White House or anything like that. So, it'd be nice to blame it for somebody else, but I think that would be untrue.
Hey, Gary, once you got the people out, were you able to gain more information as to what this group really was? I mean, it sounds like a cult sitting here, and it seems like some of these, it wasn't as nefarious as some people say, or was it?
Well, more than you may think. I mean, a lot of the people inside, and we got to speak on the phone with people other than David Koresh as well, and actually we spent more time talking to his deputy, Steve Snyder, but they could be very down to earth, very normal sounding people in many ways, but they had all sort of gathered around David Koresh and came to follow him because they had compelling and strong needs to have answers to questions about their religious life. And these are people normally brought up in that Seventh-day Adventist, philosophy, and they believed in the end times, and they believed David Koresh was very special. Was he the Son of God? Was he God himself? I mean, I wouldn't begin to fully say what they believed, but there's one thing we learned very quickly, and that never changed throughout. David Koresh, whatever he believed, his followers believed him 100% without reservation. He was the one that told them what to do, when to do it, and who to do it with, and his word was the final word. So various times when we would have cooperative interactions with various people inside, that was good, but the bad news was we knew that there was only one person that really we had to negotiate with, and only one person that could make decisions, and that was David Koresh.
It's like the Jim Jones thing, pretty much, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, cult is viewed by religious scholars as sort of a pejorative. It's a negative term, but I think like it or not, it's a term that the public understands, and it's people who have really devoted themselves to a messianic leader who they feel has special knowledge and special insights. And David Koresh was not a well-educated person. He had learning disabilities as a kid, but he'd been able to basically memorize the Bible and string together what his followers believed were very persuasive and enlightening philosophical arguments about his interpretation of the book of Revelation, which is a very dark part of the Bible that most of these millennial groups focus their beliefs on, that part of the end times and the conflict between good and evil. And, when that's ingrained in your system year after year, and you've given up all your worldly possessions and you've hitched your wagon to this Messiah-like guy, I mean, it's very difficult to convince those people that they're perhaps being led astray.
Sure.
I've been watching this on Netflix. It's called Money Heist, and one of the biggest things is the negotiator. I'm curious. You seem very mellow, and so because I think you have to have a certain personality.
He's the right guy. I mean, Dog Day Afternoon, right here. This is the guy that should be talking to someone like that.
Because when you go into each situation, you can't approach it always the same. So how do you like? Do you have to do some sort of research or to go before you answer the phone for the first time, or do you just instantly go with instinct when you pick up the phone?
Well, a situation like this, I'll use as an example. I mean, when I got to the scene, I knew very little about David Koresh, and in the days that followed, we developed a great deal of information about him, his family, his background, and interviews with people that knew him to tell us about him. All those, aspects of research are ongoing and never ending during a crisis. But sometimes you can't sit and wait for all of that to come in conveniently to help you steer your course. So you have to jump right in and try to use your communication skills to try to convince this person that despite what they may think, you're there to help them and not to make the situation worse. And we've learned as negotiators that we do that primarily through listening, demonstrating that while we may not understand, the Book of Revelation or wouldn't attempt to convince you that your interpretation is wrong, but we really want to help you and everybody come out of there alive safely, and we're trustworthy and we're genuine and we're sincere. Those are the sort of consistent tools that we use in almost every situation. It works a great deal, guys, because people involved in these confrontations, you could almost say that they're having the worst day of their life. If you're
Right.
talking to an FBI negotiator, it's not a good day.
Right.
And they expect us to be very commanding, authoritative, and dictating to them what they should do and how they have to comply. And instead, Gary or Bob or John gets on the phone and says, "Hey, can you tell me what's going on inside? I want to understand. I want to help." It paints a different picture for them, and it makes it difficult for them to remain argumentative with somebody that's really not arguing back, and is at least expressing a desire to understand how you feel about what's going on, how it's affecting you. And, a lot of that is letting them vent. In the case of David Koresh early on, is he wanted to vent about his anger towards ATF. And I remember telling ATF agents who were there that first night, I said, "Listen, when he says these things, I'm not going to defend you. It's not because I don't support you or that I disagree with his characterization." I said, "But my job is to convince him that I'm somebody different and I'm here and trying to help him and somebody he can look to get a fair shake." And I said, "If that means I have to distance myself from you folks, then that's what I'm doing and why." And they understood that. Certainly didn't pile on and blame ATF for anything, but I would say things like, "Well, I can understand how you feel about that. And it sounds like you feel that, that this was handled all wrong and they should have arrested you when you were in town. And, we really need to get your side of the story out. And the best way to do that is for you to come out and, tell your side of the story." So that kind of gives you a little window of how we do it. Some people think negotiations is trickery and manipulation. And, I'm not saying none of that ever exists, but by and large, about relationship building. It's about establishing trust. I'll share with you a little story that in all the negotiation courses I used to teach, I talk about how at the end of these incidents, I'd ask somebody, "Why did you surrender? What did I say? What did we do that made you agree to come out?" And the answer was always the same. And it was, "Well, I don't remember what you said, but I like the way you said it." And if you think about that, not only in a negotiation context, but in life in general, if you can be likable and genuine, people want to work with you. They want to cooperate because you're respectful. You're a good guy. You meet somebody at a social function, and sometimes you don't like the person right away, but other times you'll go back and tell your significant other, "Hey, I met this really nice person at the party, and they're new to the neighborhood. We should have them over for dinner. They seem like real nice people." How do you define that likability, that genuineness? So good negotiators exercise a lot of self-control. They're people who are good listeners, good communicators. In law enforcement, they're people that get confessions and get good information through interviews, whether they're witnesses or perpetrators. And those are the kind of plain upfront skill sets that we use.
See, it's hard to imagine for Tony and I that just certainly for me to stay calm in that, especially if there's something nefarious going on there. You're going to right, yeah, exactly. And that brings us to another good question: is that what did you guys find out about? Were there crimes going on inside, like against kids or anything like that?
There was long-standing allegations of child sexual abuse. I mean, I heard some reports that he would use corporal punishment in some of the children, but we certainly weren't in a position to verify that. But he had fathered children with several underage women inside, including one girl as young as 12 that I know of.
Jesus.
So that's in in the television show and some of the documentaries they talk about in Texas at the time, there was a law that said, you could have marital relationships with a girl as young as 14 if her parents approved that. I don't think that's the case anymore, but I think most of us would suggest that is highly inappropriate, and yet Koresh did that, and he did share with his followers. He had an epiphany maybe a year or so before this all occurred, that he was the one that was supposed to have exclusive sexual contact with the women inside. So all the men were basically operating under a rule of celibacy. And that's again a classic sort of thing you see with cult leaders. Sexual exploitation always seems to come to the forefront at some juncture.
And that's where we think it would be very difficult to stay calm and just talk to him like that's a normal thing. Oh, really? So you're the one that slept with that 12-year-old?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I would be like, I'll kill you. I mean,
yeah. Well,
it's hard not to do that.
I have in my book, Stalling for Time, I begin my chapters with quotes, and one of them is one of my favorite. It's a partial quote from Rudyard Kipling, and he said, if you can keep your head about you when all else are losing theirs. It's certainly been my experience that when emotions are high, people are unable to think and behave in a rational way. So for the negotiator to be successful, we have to keep a control of our own emotions. How can I influence you if I can't control my
Sure.
own emotions?
Sure.
So that's a real important component to this. It doesn't mean that you don't get mad or upset or want to strangle the person through the telephone, but you can't. You have to focus on not what terrible things have already happened or may even be ongoing, but preventing further things from happening. And it's sort of like a trauma surgeon. A busload of school kids come in and they're all mangled up, and that surgeon can't sit there and go, woe is me. They have to get to work and save lives. And
that's what Frank said to us. We have a good friend who was a trauma surgeon in New York City, and he told us how he would literally have his hands in someone's chest and they would die.
Yeah.
And he literally said, I couldn't even take a second to go, oh, this is terrible, because there's a guy over here that's only got 10 seconds to go. I got to go help him.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I think there's an analogy there for negotiators, that we have to, it's sort of the serenity prayer, the famous serenity prayer where, you understand what you can do and what you can't do, and you understand the difference, and you focus on the things that you can do to make a positive outcome. So, in the 25 years of Waco, there's been 12 documentaries. Now there's the TV show, there's been books, and there's a lot of people that have gravitated to sort of these polarized positions that everyone inside was a nut job and deserved what they got, or big old bad evil government came in and decided to kill everybody. And those are really simplistic, sort of ignorant positions if you want to know the truth. This is a complex, nuanced situation. I mean, there was good and bad decision making on both sides. Mm-hmm. And it's really challenging to try to keep, I used to tell people, if I could have gotten David Koresh and my commander to act reasonable at the same time, we could have got this thing solved.
Right.
So sometimes as a negotiator, your negotiations is just as challenging with your own team as it is with the person you're trying to get to comply.
See, people don't think about that. That's a great point.
Yeah, and I'm looking at an article, and it says ATF says changes since 1993 Waco siege has improved agency. I mean, over 80 people died, including 24 children. If that was today, let's say in 2018, the Davidian was today, do you think that the end results wouldn't have happened?
I hope not. I mean,
because what is the changes? What are the changes that they did? I mean,
yeah. If you want to know the truth, and this is not something people.
This is truth be told. We're here. You're here, Gary, to give us the truth.
What people don't expect to hear when I'm asked, what did the FBI learn in Waco? And what I tell them is, we learned to do what we had been doing before Waco. The FBI had sort of led the world in how to manage these things: prison riots, right-wing militia standoffs, skyjackings. And the decision-making challenges that we had at Waco were really a departure from our standard approach. And we paid a price for that, and it contributed to the unsatisfactory outcome, the terrible, tragic outcome. So after Waco, the on-scene commander and the tactical commander were both sort of encouraged to retire. Their careers were pretty shot. I was given a promotion, and as the chief negotiator, and my job was for the first couple of years to provide training to all the on-scene commanders in the FBI that head up the 56 field offices. Say, here's how you manage one of these things. Here's how you have to make decisions. Here's how your negotiators work. Here's how you need to support them. Here's how they interact vis-a-vis the tactical team, and how these three components should work together. And these are all things we'd known and had led the world in teaching and instructing. And yet we departed from it in Waco. And people don't understand how that could have happened, but it did.
And I know that this new TV series coming out, which I'm sure you was a huge part of it, and I think it's based on your book Stalling for Time. So when they approached you, I mean, like you said, there's already been dozens of documentaries, and what was the reasons? Like, okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and be a part of this. Was it to continue to the conversation of how we can't prevent future incidents like this, or what was the reasons to move forward with this?
Well, certainly one of the reasons. I was impressed with John and Drew Dowdle, the producer-directors, and they convinced me that they wanted to take, I mean, even though it was a dramatic depiction and not a documentary,
right,
they really wanted to focus in two primary areas. One, they wanted to show the perspective of the Davidians looking out, and for that, they acquired the book rights from David Thibodeau, who was one of the survivors on the final day. And then they wanted to secure my book to tell the story of the FBI outside looking in. And I thought that was an approach that had not been taken. The second compelling reason for me, and the reason I continue to do interviews, is what I think was the absolutely amazing work of the negotiation team has mostly gone unheralded in the past 25 years. It's all boiled down to the fire and the tanks and the Davidians and the child abuse. But the negotiation team, in order to secure the release and 35 people in their cooperation, did some of the most truly innovative things that if you were a negotiator, you would appreciate, and has become textbook lessons for hostage negotiators all over the world because of the good things we did.
It's an excellent point. And as Tony brought up in the beginning, younger people today, since it's been 25 years, don't really know much about Waco. And if they do, they cut right to what you said. They just know, oh, that's when the government went in and blew this up. That's like they know that soundbite of that. They don't know the intricacies of it. And you're right. That's an awesome reason to do that, because those negotiators really...
Yeah. And the 6-part miniseries Waco on the Paramount Network, I'm fortunate that I was played by Mike Shannon, and I had the chance to be out there for some of the filming and got to become good friends with Mike, and he's a tremendous actor. Was just in The Shape of Water, and Mike, I think, did a wonderful job of depicting the negotiation philosophy and the successes we were having and why that should have continued. And to me, even though in the movie it's depicted as myself supported by one other negotiator, in reality it was a whole team of people. But the things he did are all accurate, and they reflect the innovation and creativity of the negotiation team that, in my opinion, not nearly so many people would have come out if we hadn't been as effective as we were. So I was pleased to see that part of it. It's a dramatic series, and there's things depicted that didn't happen. They have my character doing things I didn't do, but that's okay. But basically it tells, I think, the emotional side of the two opposing factions in this tragedy.
At the end, I mean, there was a tragedy with so many people, being killed, and one of the questions was that I heard from somebody is, who really started the fire at the end? Could you tell us who did and why was that fire started?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was gone by that time.
Right.
But, after I left halfway through, so for the last 25 days or so, nobody came out. I mean,
did you leave the scene completely, or did you just stop the negotiating?
I left the scene. I went back to Washington.
Okay.
Yeah. So no one else came out, and there was a huge impasse. And the FBI took the unprecedented move, allowing two attorneys to go inside and represent David Koresh to see if they could help convince him that he'd get a fair trial in court and so forth. And they came out and said that he's going to surrender as soon as he writes down his interpretation of the seven seals. Well, another week or so went by, and the FBI learned that he hadn't even begun. And there are those that dispute that, but nothing tangible was ever proved. And so, in theory, the FBI is saying, well, what is this going to take? 6 months, a year? How long do we stay out here? So they decided to, put in tear gas, which, the TV movie cites about 6 or 7 incidents around the country where tear gas has started fires. And that's true. But they don't cite the 1,000 incidents where it's been used and it hasn't started a fire. Law enforcement has very few tools beyond negotiations and then all the way up to the use of deadly force. And tear gas is one of those options, and it usually is pretty effective. When they put in the tear gas, I think there's some serious questions about the robust manner with which it was inserted. But I think that finally triggered in Koresh's mind that whatever ambivalence, part of him wanted to live, part of him wanted to die, that turned the tide for him, and he ordered the fires. Now, the Davidians insist that they did not, but there's some very compelling evidence. The FBI had secreted some microphones inside the compound, and there's, I think, 9 overhears that are more or less along the lines of someone saying, spread the fuel, light the fires.
And Gary, you made a good point earlier that nobody's voice in there mattered but his.
Absolutely.
So that tells me that easily could have just been him, and the Davidians genuinely didn't know that this occurred.
Well, and the fire started in 3 separate places simultaneously. And the third thing is there was a fellow named his name, it'll come back to me, but there's one of the survivors. There was 9 individuals, 8 men and 1 woman, who survived the final day. And this one fella, he came out and he testified before a grand jury. The next day he said, yeah, I saw my fellow Davidians light the fire. So even though it's a question in the minds of some and it doesn't support the anti-government conspiracy theorists, the reality is they started the fire. Now, they started it based on a reaction to the FBI's insertion of gas. I wouldn't attempt to refute that, but I think the FBI has gotten a bum rap on from some people say, well, the tear gas started the fire.
Oh yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah, it didn't.
Well, before I mean, this time is going so fast, and I mean, I just love this stuff because I've talked to many people about other mass suicides and organizations like this, or even just cults. Yeah, I find cults fascinating because it's hard to believe so many people believe and follow.
Hard to believe.
This one man. Why? And I know you may not be into all this, but why do you think so many people continue to want to stay, especially with the children, in this situation and not just get out?
That's a tough one, and part of our efforts as negotiators was to appeal particularly to the mothers inside. When some of the children had been released, we actually sent a videotape of the children back inside, and what we were trying to do is tug at the heartstrings of the moms. And we said, no, because the kids would come out with a note pinned to them saying that they were supposed to be sent off to some distant relative, and we said, no, we're keeping them here in a very comfortable Child Protective Services home, and we're waiting for you, Mom and Dad, to come out and resume your parental responsibilities. But and some of them took us up on that, but there were far too many that their loyalty to David Koresh was so ingrained and so deep that they didn't do that. It's interesting, and this sounds very harsh to say, but that final day of the fire, that 9 people survived. None of them came out with a kid. None of them came out carrying a child. And I think that tells you an awful lot.
Right.
I think most of us who are parents would say, well, I'm either going to die in the fire or I'm coming out with my kid. There's just no way. But these people were so entranced and enthralled and really, truly believed. I don't question their sincere belief in David Koresh. that they all thought they were coming back again. In fact, there's a few survivors that are still waiting for David to come back. You
That's
know,
that's to me that just I mean it sounds so crazy and just hard to believe, but it happens all the time. It really does happen all the time to this day.
there's a lot of interesting cults now. There's the Bhagwan thing on Netflix. There's
Right.
I understand they're making some shows about Charles Manson, and Homeland's doing something about a cult. You know, people need to be careful. These things can be dangerous. Whenever surrender your free thought to someone else, it's a recipe for problems.
So before, because I want to move on to some current topics, but can the FBI step into any of these cults? And like I said, I know this we're getting a little off topic. Step into these cults, if they can. What's the line that the cult has to draw or go across before the FBI gets involved?
For the FBI to be involved, there has to be. I mean, if it's terrorism, it's a pretty broad thing,
Right.
unless they're terrorizing their community or whatever it might
Right.
be. And by the way, 3 years after Waco, that's what got us into the Montana Freeman siege that lasted 85 days.
I do remember that.
And then we followed the negotiation strategies, and no shots were fired, and everybody surrendered. It was a happy ending. But there has to be a violation of federal law of some kind to bring the FBI jurisdictionally into the case. I know it's a little off topic, but the Parkland school shooting.
Right.
I saw this on the news, and everybody's saying, "Oh, the FBI screwed up. They should have got this kid." But again, it's people not knowing how this works. So you get a report, and you say this kid's, saying bad things on the internet, and he has guns. So the FBI knocks on his door and says, "Did you say these things?" And the kid says, "I was joking. I didn't mean it." "Do you have a gun in your house?" "Maybe." "Can we look?" "No." Well, have a nice day. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, it's not like we can go out and round up everybody that acts strange or goofy. We'd have half the country
right.
in jail if we were able to do that. So things aren't as easy as people think. I mean, the FBI and other law enforcement agencies have rules and regulations and legal restrictions on our activities. And when it comes to religion, as you know, there's a long history in the United States of the government staying well away and well out of, interfering with the religious organization's right to exercise their religion as they see fit.
Well, the time is going so fast. You're so interesting, and I love that you're bringing this to, back to life, because I really think we can learn from so many of our past incidences, and especially this one. And I hope that a lot of the younger people can really enjoy this series and understand how people can get involved into a cult and really get wrapped up, and then it could turn out to be a tragedy like this. But right in the
if I could say one more
yeah,
thing.
of course.
The other thing I would say is it certainly seems politically topical today to want to paint the government as big, bad, and evil.
Right.
Well, the government is us.
Right.
Government employees are us. We have the government we want or deserve, be it good or bad. The government is large. It's bureaucratic. It often seemingly does things that someone may feel don't make sense. Sometimes that's based on some law that was passed by Congress that nobody understands. But I've never seen the government to be inherently evil or want to do bad things. And when I see my fellow Americans believe that about the FBI or anybody else, I find it deeply disturbing. Like everybody at the State Department is is a communist, and the FBI, they're all bad, and ATF just wants to come around and take everybody's guns. I mean, it's so easy to make these very general statements that are largely inaccurate. And life is, I would just urge your listeners, life is complex.
There's a lot more gray, and everything's black and white now.
It's always been gray. And study the issues and get information from different sources, and come to an educated opinion about things. That's fine, but don't fall into this conspiracy nonsense. When my book came out, I spoke at the Baltimore Book Festival in 2012, and Jesse Ventura appeared in the room to speak after I did. And I listened to him speak after I did, and his theory was the U.S. government blew up the World Trade Centers. and say, where do people get this stuff? I mean, the government's not that organized to pull off a conspiracy like that without somebody telling it. And I don't know. It's just, I guess people make money doing that sort of thing. But, again, I would just urge your listeners to really study and read and look at all sides of an issue.
Hear, hear.
Well, the only problem with studying read nowadays, there's so many, and I hate to say it, fake news out there.
Jeez.
Because anybody can write articles, anybody can put the website together. So many people read so much stuff
Garbage.
that's just made up to get a reaction. So it's really hard. I guess choose your sources wisely. There you go.
Yeah, and you have to be a discriminating consumer of information. I mean, if you're only watching one source of news or getting all your opinions from one, talk show radio host or whatever, all due respect to you, wonderful man, but you're denying yourself an opportunity to hear other voices and other opinions and other information. And you need to be a good consumer of information and do your homework. And that's all I would say about that. But it sounds like you all agree. And
Absolutely
I
agree with
I wish I could see more of that in our country today.
And speaking of that, and we have just about 3 minutes left. Is in the news right now is the FBI is, to me, is just being bombarded with negative. Everything's negative towards him because from the president to the Congress to anybody, Comey's
going on, right?
And this, what's the guy that just got fired the day before he retired? I mean, it honestly just broke my heart when I heard that because, so many people have put so many negative stories out about the FBI at the moment. What is your thoughts on what's going on in Washington, especially towards, not necessarily FBI is, used to be the pinnacle of the government. So now they're getting so much negative, especially in the last few years. What is your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, I still think the FBI consists of the best and brightest of what we have. But what bothers me most is I never worked for Comey. I don't know him, and I didn't know McCabe. I did work for Mueller, and the man's very thorough and exudes integrity.
Right.
And I would trust him to investigate anything without reservation. But what bothers me is, I don't know what mistakes Comey may have made in terms of the Hillary thing, and I don't know what McCabe did. I haven't heard all the facts about what he purportedly did that caused his firing. I don't like the manner with which he was fired. I find that suspicious. But most important for me is I don't like how the FBI is being attacked for someone else's agenda.
Right.
I find that the same reason I don't like the news media being attacked, because there are certain institutions we need in our society, and one is a free and open press. Doesn't mean it may not be biased from time to time, but you need it. And the FBI, I think, has had a very well-deserved reputation of serving the American people very well. I mean, I've had people say to me since all this stuff some terrible things about the FBI, and they say, well, who are you going to call when your kid's kidnapped?
That's right. That's right. That's a good point. James Clapper's come out and said those two exact points too, that, the news media and the FBI. It's incredible what's happened.
I mean, and it's not to suggest that people in the FBI can't and don't make mistakes. They do, and if there's a reckoning that needs to be had from an investigation of wrongdoing or whatever, then by all means do that. We've always done that.
Right.
But this broad-based, unsubstantiated
dismissal of the whole organization is ridiculous.
I find it very troubling, and I don't think it's good for our country. And I wish the president would stop doing that. I think he's doing a terrible disservice to us all.
Hear, hear.
All right. Well, we appreciate you. We appreciate you doing the service that you've given to our country and writing this book.
And sharing your insights with us. It's fascinating.
Yes, and so we'd love to have you back anytime.
Please,
of course, and please go out and get the book, Stalling for Time, and please watch the Paramount. When's the TV series start?
It's already aired.
Oh, it's already aired.
Because I don't have the
time. I'm sure they'll show it again.
Sure.
It premiered in January. You can get it on iTunes, I understand.
Oh, great. Okay.
And it'll probably come out on Netflix eventually, or Amazon or something like that. But it's been very well received, and it's gotten very good ratings. And it's not perfect, as I said, but I'm very impressed with the quality of it. The acting's phenomenal.
Awesome.
And it's a great production, and I'm very proud to have been associated with it.
Well, I'm glad they got Brad Pitt to portray you. That was a perfect match.
Hey, Michael Shannon's, maybe even better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
there
no,
you go.
I think it's great. So, all right, sir, thank you so much. And please go to your website, Gary Noesner. And it's not Nestor the way it sounds. So
There's
it's
an O in there.
Yeah, Noesner. So go to his website. You can check out where Gary's going to be. Do you have any upcoming events you're going to be signing books or any places around? Or
Yeah, I think Monday night or Tuesday night. Monday night, I'm going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina at the Quail Hollow bookstore.
Oh, nice.
Doing a joint event with another author, and and then I got to go to Hawaii and give a speech. So it's
Tough.
tough times.
I was going to say, don't feel sorry for Gary. All right, sir. Thank you so much for joining us on Truth Be Told.
All right, thank you both.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in. Go to truthbetoldwebtv.com. Check out our website.
More importantly, let's go to the tea.
Yeah, go to the tea. So pick up some tea. Getthetea.com. It's one of the life-changing teas that, it's so good. Seriously, it tastes so good. I'm not a big tea drinker, but this is so good. It makes you feel good. It makes you run to the bathroom once in a while. But it's a great tea. But go to getthetea.com and pick it up today. Just say that Truth Be Told sent you over, and we really appreciate it.
Also, you can see us at Contact in the Desert coming up and Alien Con coming up as well.
One of my favorite places. All right, until next time, I'm Tony Sweet.
Captain Ron.
See ya.
Public about this, it would panic the public.
My interest is in full disclosure.
There has been and is an existing presence.
This is more about a human rights issue than just a UFO issue.
I think if someone's interested not only in hearing amazing lectures, fascinating ideas, and really expanding their mind, but also in meeting so many other like-minded people, this is really a great place to come to.
People of all different religions, races, but they all have one thing in common. Their minds are open and they're inquisitive.
I love Contact in the Desert. It's a unique conference. We're in at the beginning of something really quite exciting here. There's a groundswell of real passion about this.
There is something that has come in that they may never have expected. And I think that we're finally going to get the truth.
It's really good to know that the world's eyes are opening.
Yes, there was contact with extraterrestrial. Yes, there are UFOs. Yes, we have a scientific proof. You never read this. If just one magazine starts it, all the other continue.
Anything you want, anything you're looking for, any answers you're seeking, you're going to find them here.
I love Contact in the Desert. This is my third year. I keep coming back because it's such an amazing gathering of incredible researchers, experiencers.
All of the limited conceptions we have about life and about what it means to be alive pale in comparison to this extraordinary reality and the challenges of our little biosphere will seem trivial.
If there is one thing that can change the world right now, I feel it is to open this information and really bring disclosure. It's not about waiting, okay, maybe one day the government is going to do it. We need to do it, and we need to help our government as well. So come here.
No, we don't tell the public about.
Hey, this is Tony from Truth Be Told. Captain Ron and I want to tell you about a new product that is sponsoring our show called GetTheTea.com, home of Life Change Tea. We've been using this product for over a month now, and we've seen a change in the way we feel. More energy, starting to lose weight. As someone that works out on a regular basis, I didn't know if this tea was really going to help me, but I have to say, I was surprised, feeling great with more energy, and I have lost a few pounds in over a few weeks. So Captain Ron and I endorse this product, and we hope that you go to getthetea.com and pick up the Super Tea. Life Change Tea is a unique blend of all natural ingredients used with great results for several years. They take great pride in selling all organic U.S. manufactured product. It's a special blend which aids in maintaining great digestion, boosting your immune system, and may help cleanse your body from unwanted intruders. So stay healthy, stay happy by going to getthetea.com. Tell them that Truth Be Told sent you.